My sister's husband came into my bedroom last night, and something strange happened. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. At first, I thought I was dreaming, because why would anyone be in my room at 2:30 in the morning? But when my eyes adjusted, I saw him. My sister's husband, standing in the doorway, watching me. I froze, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. He didn't say anything at first, just stepped inside and closed the door softly behind him. The moonlight from the window hit his face, and I swear he looked different, like a stranger. Then he whispered, "Don't scream." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My mind was screaming questions. Why is he here? What does he want? Where is my sister? But none of them came out of my mouth. He walked closer, slow, careful steps, like he didn't want to wake the whole house. And then, just before he reached my bed, he leaned down so close I could feel his breath on my cheek. "I need to tell you something," he said. His voice was low, urgent, but you can't repeat it, not to anyone, especially not to her. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the words got stuck in my throat. That's when he dropped something small and cold into my hand, a folded piece of paper. "Read it in the morning," he whispered, "not now. And remember, this stays between us." Then he slipped out as quietly as he had come, leaving me frozen in my bed with that paper clenched in my shaking hand. I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. All I could do was stare at my door, half expecting him to come back, half terrified of what might be written inside. And that's where everything started, this strange, secret moment in the middle of the night that has turned my whole world upside down. But before I tell you what the paper said, I need to explain how things got to this point, because this didn't come out of nowhere. There were signs, little things I brushed off, moments that seemed harmless at the time, but now feel like warnings I should have taken more seriously. And now, I don't know if opening that note was the worst mistake of my life, or the beginning of uncovering something I was never meant to know. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just sat there, staring at that folded piece of paper like it was a ticking bomb. My hand kept brushing against it under the blanket, but I couldn't bring myself to open it in the dark. When the first light of morning crept through my blinds, I finally forced myself to unfold it. The handwriting was messy, like it had been scrawled in a rush. It said, "She's lying to you. Don't trust her. Don't say anything yet. Don't say anything yet." That was it. No explanation, no context, just those words. My stomach knotted instantly. Who was she? My sister? Someone else? And why bring this to me in the middle of the night instead of talking to her directly? I shoved the note into my desk drawer before anyone could see it. My sister knocked on my door a few minutes later, cheerful as always, asking if I wanted coffee. Her husband was right behind her, carrying their toddler on his hip, acting like nothing unusual had happened just hours before. I couldn't look at him without remembering the whisper in the dark, "Don't scream." The whole morning was unbearable. Every time he glanced at me, I felt like my skin was crawling. I kept replaying the night in my head, asking myself if maybe I had imagined it, if maybe I had been half asleep and misheard or misunderstood. But the note in my drawer said otherwise. By noon, my nerves were so fried that I decided to leave the house and clear my head. I told my sister I was going to run errands, but really, I just drove aimlessly for hours. Every time my phone buzzed, I nearly jumped out of my skin, terrified it would be him. When I came back home in the evening, the atmosphere had shifted. My sister was cold, distant. She barely spoke to me over dinner. Her husband, on the other hand, seemed relaxed, almost smug. And then, just as I was about to excuse myself, my sister looked me dead in the eye and said, "So, did he tell you anything?" I nearly dropped my fork. My heart stopped. How did she know? The air around the table felt heavier than stone. I wanted to lie, to play dumb, but my face must have given me away, because her expression hardened. Her husband didn't say a word. He just leaned back in his chair, watching me with that same strange look from the night before. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about a note. This was about something much bigger, something they were both tangled in. And somehow, I had just been pulled straight into the middle of it. The silence after my sister's question stretched so long, it felt like the walls themselves were listening. "Did he tell you anything?" she repeated, slower this time, her eyes locked onto mine. My throat went dry. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I could feel her husband's gaze on me like a spotlight, waiting for my response. Finally, I forced out, "No, he didn't tell me anything." It was a lie, and I knew instantly she didn't believe it. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Good," she said softly, almost too softly. "Because if he did, you'd regret it." That sent a chill straight down my spine. Dinner ended in complete silence. I retreated to my room, my hands shaking as I locked the door behind me. I pulled the note from the drawer and stared at it again, the words blurring as tears filled my eyes. "She's lying to you. Don't trust her." Was this what he meant? Was my sister hiding something dangerous? Or was this all just some twisted mind game he was playing, and I was the pawn? I didn't have time to sort it out, because just as I stuffed the note back into the drawer, there was a knock at my door. Not just a knock, a slow, steady tap. Open up, my sister's voice came through, calm but sharp. I froze. My instincts screamed not to. Open the door, she said again, more firmly this time. I didn't move. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might shake the bed. After a long pause, her footsteps faded away. I thought I was safe. I thought maybe she'd given up. But when I finally lay back down, trying to calm myself, I caught something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow at my window. And that's when I realized someone was standing outside, watching me. My skin prickled when I saw the shadow at the window. For a moment, I thought I was still half asleep, making things up. Then the figure shifted, and I could see the shape of a person standing very still by the glass. I got up quietly and moved toward the window, careful not to make a sound. My heart hammered so loud it felt like it might wake the whole house. I pressed my face to the curtain and peered through the slit. He was there, my sister's husband, hands in his pockets, looking up at my second-floor window as if he were waiting for me. The moonlight made his face a pale mask. He was not smiling. He looked like someone who had been practicing how to stand still for a long time. For a second, I thought he might not have seen me. Then he looked directly up and our eyes met through the thin glass. His expression was unreadable, too calm, too sure. I stumbled back from the window so fast I bumped my knee on the dresser. My breath left me in a small, sharp hiss. I could have opened the window, I thought. I could have shouted down to him and demanded answers. But something in the way he held himself told me that would be dangerous. He wasn't just watching, he was testing me. My mind raced. Why would he do this? Why come to my room at night and whisper that warning, and then stand outside my window like some ghost? The note, "She's lying to you, don't trust her," was burning in my brain. If he came to warn me, why not tell me who she was? If he wanted me to keep quiet, why threaten me by being here under the stars? I sat down on the edge of my bed and tried to think of something sensible. My hands shook so much I could hardly fold the note again. I pushed it into the back of my drawer and shut it, locking it like that would make it safe. Then I unlocked my phone and typed a message to my sister, fingers trembling. "Can we talk? Can we please talk about last night?" No reply. I left it like that and sent another to her husband. "Why did you come into my room?" The typing dots appeared under the message, and for a second I felt relief. Maybe he would answer and everything would make sense. Maybe he would say he was worried about my safety and wanted to tell me that my sister had been acting strange because of stress. Maybe this would all be a terrible misunderstanding. Then the message I had just sent vanished from my screen. The bubbles disappeared as if the entire conversation had been scrubbed clean. My phone showed only my own message, like it had never sent. I stared at the blank chat window horrified. I'd seen enough odd things that week to know this was not normal. The man outside the window had ways to erase what he did. He had ways to make a line look invisible. A soft thump came from downstairs. It was small, like someone placing something on the table. I held my breath, listening. A second thump followed. Then a quiet footstep crossed the hardwood below. My sister was moving in the kitchen. She did not call out, but I could tell from the sound she was alone. My mind filled with questions. Was she in on this? Was she pretending to be fine while plotting something? Or was she afraid of him, the way he had said? The note said, "Don't trust her." The man at my window had said, "Don't tell her." The pieces didn't fit. The next sound made my blood run cold. A small, soft scratch at my bedroom door. Not a knock, not a voice, just the quiet scrape of something being dragged across the floor outside my door. My heart leaped into my throat. I pressed my back against the wall behind my bed and watched the door as if it were a screen that would suddenly show a bad movie scene. The scratch stopped. A breathy silence followed. Then from the hallway, I heard my sister's voice, sweet and normal, calling, "You okay in there?" Her husband answered in the background, low and perfectly ordinary. "Yeah, go back to bed, babe." My legs wanted to move, my feet wanted to run, but I stayed still, frozen, because somewhere in the quiet, I heard the faint creak of the front gate. Someone was leaving the property. Someone had been here and was going now. I kept my window shades closed and waited with my heart pounding until I could no longer hear anything. I crawled back into bed and pulled the covers over my head, the note tight in my hand. The small paper felt suddenly heavy, like an anchor. In the morning, I told myself I would ask her everything. I would demand the truth. I would get answers. But when I came down the stairs, my sister was already there, smiling like the sun, pouring 2 cups of coffee as if nothing in the world had happened. "How was your night?" she asked, her voice bright. I watched her move across the kitchen and felt something break inside me. Behind her, the back door seemed slightly ajar, just a sliver of light cutting the kitchen floor. I glanced at her and then back at that small gap and realized in a cold rush that the man at my window had likely come and gone through there. My sister set a coffee down in front of me and leaned in close, a laugh in her eyes that didn't reach the corners of her mouth. "I'm glad you're home," she said. "We need to talk about some family things, but not yet." She smiled in a way that made me think of the note. She smiled like someone who had secrets to guard. That night, when everyone had gone to bed, I pulled the curtains aside once more. I wanted to catch him leaving, wanted to see the darkness where he had stood. But the lawn was empty. No footprints, no sign he had been there. Only the moon watching the house sleep. I slid my phone under my pillow and tried to sleep, but the last thought before sleep took me was not about him. It was about her, my sister, who would not answer my questions. If she was lying, why was she playing normal? If she was scared, why did she smile like that? And as I closed my eyes, I knew one thing for sure. This was not a one-time thing. The night visit, the note, and the window watcher, they were all the first moves in a game I had no idea how to play. Because the man at my window had not come to warn me about my sister's lies. He had come to pull me into a secret I might not survive revealing. I told myself I would sleep on it. I told myself that morning would bring clarity, that I could ask small questions and piece things together. But by noon, my hands were shaking again, and the note in my drawer felt like a live thing, wanting to be opened and read and used. I waited until my sister was in the shower. I waited until I heard her singing, off-key but loud, and then I slipped into the kitchen where she kept her jewelry box and the family papers. My mind kept saying, don't do this, but the man at the window had handed me the key, and once you are handed something, curiosity is a dangerous little animal. Her desk drawer was unlocked. I slid it open with fingers that didn't want to be steady. There were bills, grocery lists, a stack of coupons, and then a thin envelope tucked between catalogs. My name was written on it in a hand I did not know. I swallowed and opened it. Inside was a photograph, not of me sleeping this time. This one was of our family from a holiday last year, smiling at the camera. Someone had circled my sister in red, and there were little marks beside other family members' faces. On the back, a single sentence, "She lies. Pick the next time carefully." I slammed the envelope shut like it burned my palm. My heart hammered. Everything felt wrong. If her husband had come to my room to warn me, why did the paper and now this photo both point to her? If she was lying, what was she hiding? If she was not lying, what game was I trapped inside? I left the envelope where I found it and went to the living room. I sat on the couch, pretending to scroll my phone while listening for the shower to stop. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel and humming, I tried to act normal. "Hey," I said, voice thin, "can we talk, privately?" She smiled the same way she had the night before, warm and careful. "Of course, after lunch, I'm just going to get dressed." I followed her upstairs when she went to pick out clothes. She didn't lock her door. She never locked her door with me around. She laughed at a silly thing in her phone, then stopped and looked up when she saw me at the bedroom entrance. "You okay?" she asked, like she always asked, like she had no idea what had been happening the past 24 hours. I swallowed hard. I knew if I waited, she'd slip into her normal rhythm and the moment would pass. I stepped into the room. "Why was your husband at my window last night?" I said, blunt and soft at once. Her face changed, a hairline crack through the smile. For half a second, I saw the woman from the photo my brother had taken last year, older, tired. She forced herself back into the easy grin and said, "What? No, he wasn't. You must be imagining things." "He came into my bedroom," I said. "He left me a note. He told me not to trust you." Silence for a beat, and then the laugh that wasn't a laugh. "You mean that silly paper? He's paranoid. He reads too much online. I told him to stop worrying over nothing." "You lied," I said. "Last night, you asked me if he told me anything. You knew." She folded her arms like a shield. "What are you playing at? Why are you looking through my things? Are you spying on me now?" I felt rage and hurt mix in my mouth, bitter and hot. "I found the note. In my room. He left it. He was outside my window. He told me don't trust you." Her face went from sleepy to sharp in a heartbeat. She took a step toward me, close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corner of her eyes. "Who gave this to you?" she demanded. "Doesn't matter," I said, even though it did. She moved like a coiled thing, and the next moment she grabbed my wrist. Her grip was harder than I expected. "Listen to me," she whispered, the voice I'd only ever heard when she was trying to get me to bed as a kid. "Whatever you think, you don't say it. You don't. Not to Mom, not to Dad, not to anyone. For your sake." My throat closed. "Why? What are you afraid of?" Her eyes searched mine, and for the first time, I saw fear there that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with someone else. She let go of my wrist slowly, like releasing a live thing. Because if this gets pulled, if anyone starts asking, there are things that will come out. Things that will not just hurt me, they will hurt everyone. Your life, my life, our parents' lives. There are promises made. There are people who watch. "What people?" I hissed. "Who watches us?" She turned away like the question burned her. "This family has old debts," she said finally, in a voice so low I had to strain to hear. "Old promises no one likes to say out loud. He's been trying to protect us from that, from the wrong questions." The words didn't fit into my head. Debts? Promises? Watching people? Protect us by sneaking into my room and making threats? She flinched. "You don't understand how complicated this is." I left the room then, because standing there felt like standing on a stage in a play I hadn't auditioned for. I walked straight to my car and started the engine, feeling stupid for wanting to run. But I didn't. I drove 2 blocks and then stopped. Running didn't make sense yet. I needed answers. I needed witnesses. I needed proof. Back inside the house, as the evening closed in, I heard the front door open and close, the quiet sounds that meant they had returned from work. My sister called out something lighthearted. I sat very still and listened for the rhythm of voices. The husband's laugh, her quick hush, the toddler's footsteps. the family sounds that had been my comfort for years. Later that night, I installed a cheap door alarm and positioned my phone by the bed with the voice recorder app on. I told myself it was excessive, childish, but I needed to feel in control of something. It helped a little. Then, around 2 in the morning, there was the soft creak, the same quiet as before. My heart thudded, my phone recorded, my breath loud as a drum. The door opened the same way. No sound of heavy boots, just small, careful steps. I heard a whisper, very close to my ear, one word only, listen. I froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was my sister's husband, but the tone was different, coded, like he was doing this in a rhythm he'd practiced. He told me a series of things under his breath, quick and clipped like a recital. She is not safe. You must. Wait, don't act. She is under watch. You must. And then a small rustle and the soft pad of feet leaving. I could have jumped up, screamed, locked the house, run next door, but the words he'd used, don't act, hung in the air. I replayed them in my head. She is not safe. What did that mean? Not safe from whom? Or for whom? I felt dizzy. Sleep was impossible after that. I knew I needed a plan. I needed to gather everything. Notes, photos, the envelope, the recorder. I needed to wake my parents, call the police, tell someone. But who would believe me? Who would believe that the person in this house who keeps saying everything is fine is at the center of something that makes people whisper and stand at windows at night? At dawn, I drove to my best friend's apartment. Her name is Emma. She and I have been inseparable since school. I told her everything, starting from the first night when I woke up to him in my doorway. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she didn't reach for a phone. She didn't make a plan right away. She looked at me very carefully and then said, "We need to protect you, but we need proof. We need to stay calm." We made a list. We were going to copy the note, photograph the envelope and the picture, take the Polaroid if there was one, and take the audio file from the recorder. Emma would stay with me tomorrow night. We would not tell my parents, yet. We would not set off a chain that might hurt anyone until we knew the shape of what we were dealing with. That evening, as I returned to my house with Emma trailed behind, my brother called. His voice was blurred by the line, and then he said, "Mom's been asking about you. She wants everyone at dinner tomorrow. Can you come?" My stomach clenched. Dinner with Mom and Dad and my sister and her husband, all sitting at a table where secrets could be spoken and swallowed? How could I do that now? I almost said no, but I didn't want suspicion pointed at me either. I said I'd come. Emma squeezed my hand when we walked in the door. She mouthed, "We'll be careful." I nodded. The night felt electric. My sister fussed with the table settings in a way that felt practiced too much. Her husband laughed at my dad's jokes at the wrong moments. Mom asked about work, about saving, about nothing that mattered, like a lullaby to cover over danger. Over the salad, my father told a story from his childhood, and my sister laughed too loud. My brother joked about sports. Everything looked normal, but my throat felt tight. I kept my phone under the table, fingers on the recorder app. If something happened, Emma would be ready, to record, to hold, to catch. After dinner, as plates were cleared, my sister asked quietly if she'd like to go for a walk with her in the yard. She reached out to touch my arm, suddenly sisterly in a way that my heart ached. I said yes, and we stepped out under the stars. The house hummed behind us. She looked at me for a long time. "I know you're upset," she said. "I know something is going on. I can't tell you everything right now, but you have to trust me." This time, her voice did not shake. Her eyes were steady. Her hand in mine felt warm and human. For a moment, the thought that she might be telling the truth passed through me like a soft wind. Maybe I had been unfair. Maybe this was something bigger than secrets and watchful men and midnight notes. Then, from the shadow near the sheds, I saw him, my sister's husband, standing with his back to the moon. He had his hands in his pockets like before. He looked up when we stepped closer, and for a second, he smiled. Not at me, not at Emma, but at nothing. He whispered 2 words that cut the night open. "Next time." And with that, he turned and walked away into the dark, like someone who had marked a line in the sand. I looked back at my sister and felt the world tilt for a reason I could not yet name. She smiled at me, small, apologetic, and squeezed my hand once. "Stay with me tonight," she said softly. "Please." I hesitated. Emma's fingers were cold on my wrist under the tablecloth. My phone buzzed without sound in my back pocket. I thought of the note, the man at the window, the fake photographs and the hollow laughter. I thought of the recorder, the Polaroid, the envelope. I thought of the life I had walked into this house to keep, and of the life I might be dragged out of by asking too many questions. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll stay." I went to bed that night with Emma on the couch and the recorder under the pillow. I felt safer than the week before, but not safe enough. When I closed my eyes, the last thing I saw was the man's silhouette moving away toward the trees, and the last thing I heard was my sister's voice in the dark. "Don't tell anyone. Not yet." I didn't know why I obeyed. I only knew the house felt different now, like a theater after the play has ended, when actors have stripped costumes but the set still holds the mark of the story. I had a list, a plan, and a friend. I had the note tucked away. I had a mouth full of questions. And I had a warning in my ear. Next time. I couldn't decide which scared me more, the next time, or what would happen if I pushed to make the secret stop. I woke up before dawn with the house too quiet. Emma had fallen asleep on the couch with her shoes still on. When I nudged her, she blinked awake and mouthed, "We good?" I wanted to say 100 things, but all I managed was, "For now." We didn't tell my parents anything. We had agreed to gather proof first. Recordings, photos, anything that wasn't just my word against theirs. I felt ridiculous making a plan like we were spies, but the world had started to look like a place where ordinary rules didn't apply anymore. That morning, I went through the recorder like a junkie looking for one fix. There were long sections of static and the low drone of the house, but about halfway through the night, I found the whisper. It was muffled, but you could tell it was a man's voice, and then my sister's hush answering. I turned the volume up until the whole room throbbed. "Don't act," he had said, the same clipped cadence as before. "Next time, wait. She'll know when." "And if she asks?" my sister's voice breathed back, small and raw. "Lie," he said. "Lie easy. Make it soft. They believe soft." My fingers went cold. The recorder had caught them speaking about me, about what to do if I found out. It was proof of collusion at least, proof that multiple people knew more than they let on. Emma insisted we make a copy and hide the original. She drove me to a shop that printed USBs, and we made two, one in her bag, one hidden in my shoebox under old holiday sweaters. We left the house that afternoon and met at a cafe far from my street. Everything felt surreal, sipping coffee while holding a stick of evidence that could break a family. We decided to go to the police with what we had. It felt like the only sane move. If they dismissed us, at least we had tried. If they took us seriously, maybe someone official could watch the house at night. Emma drove, and I sat the whole time with my palms sweating on the USB in my pocket. The officer we spoke to at the station was young and polite. He listened while I told the story. Him in my room, the note, the photos, the whispered visit. When I handed him the USB, his face changed only a little, but it was enough to make my heart give a hopeful flip. "We'll check this out," he said. "We can run plates near your address and put some extra patrols on the beat. Also, do you have any security cameras?" "No," I said. No, I don't. Not anything I'd want to leave public." He nodded. "We'll do what we can. Don't confront anyone tonight, and if anything happens, call 911 immediately." I left feeling both relieved and raw. Relief because someone official knew. Raw because the officer's calm voice had not wiped away the worry that carved at my chest. That night, Emma stayed over again. We sat awake for hours, whispering through plans. Install a camera that looks like a plant. Put a motion lamp at the back door. Keep a clear bag with the USB and copies of the note in case we needed to move fast. At 1:47 a.m., when my phone lit up with a message, my entire body went into a kind of locked panic. It was from an unknown number. "You should stop digging." Hate and fear moved through me in the same pulse. I typed back a single shaky sentence. "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. "You know." I dared to peek out the curtain. Nothing obvious. The yard was dark and flat, and the trees looked like black charcoal against the sky. Still, there was a shape at the fence line. Far off, a flash of movement, like someone turning away. It might have been a deer. It might have been a person. My mind filled the gap with possibilities I didn't want. I texted the officer who'd taken the USB. No answer. 20 minutes later, a different number I recognized, my sister's. She asked if I was asleep, and when I didn't answer for a full minute, she sent, "Just want you to know we love you. Don't make this bigger than it is. It'll only hurt people." I stared at the words and felt sick. Don't make this bigger? That was the exact pattern he had warned about. Soft words, the language of minimization. She was telling me to quiet myself, in front of me, like a blanket being thrown over my mouth. The following morning, I went to see the officer again. He had not called back because his shift had been busy. There had been break-ins nearby. He promised again to do patrols. He also told me, quietly, to document everything. Every knock, every odd call, every message. "If this escalates, we'll have a paper trail," he said. Paper trail. It sounded like armor. When I got home, something new waited on the kitchen table. A postcard, no stamp, no return address. On it, someone had written in large looping letters, "We are watching. Don't be a hero." Beneath those words, in a different ink, an arrow pointed to the right where someone had printed in tiny type, "Third Oak, 9:12 p.m." My breath hitched. Third Oak was the little cluster of trees behind the shed. 9:12 was tonight. I turned the postcard over and found a small smear of dirt on the back, fresh, as if it had been handled only minutes earlier. Someone had been so close. I thought of the man at my window. I thought of the whispered instructions. I thought of my sister's words at dinner. And a cold, terrible realization slid into place. I was no longer just an accidental witness. I was a part of whatever they were protecting. If I dug, if I showed, I risked stepping on something they'd already buried. That night, Emma insisted on bringing a sleeping bag and bedding into my room. "We'll sit up with cameras," she said, determined. "We'll prove who's out there." We set the phone to record again, the LED blinking like a small defiant heart. I positioned the plant camera idea near the window and kept the original recorder under my pillow. The house hummed with normal household noises, pipes, a passing car, and my nerves tightened into raw wire. At 9:10 p.m., a soft rustle came from the yard. The plant camera captured nothing at first. Then, at 9:11, a shadow moved across the frame. A human figure, slow and deliberate, passing the fence line. My heart almost stopped. At 9:12, a light flashed near Third Oak. On my phone, the audio recorded the faintest scraping of shoe on stone. I watched the screen and realized someone had left something at the tree. A small bundle, wrapped in plastic, placed carefully beside the trunk. I couldn't see who it was. We were too far. But the timing fit the postcard exactly. I wanted to run outside and tear the thing open. I wanted to shout and call the police and drag whoever had done it into the light and make them answer for every whisper and every threat. Instead, I remembered the officer's words and the man's voice, "Don't act." And I sat, hands clenched so tight I thought they might cramp. At 9:20, a text came to my phone from an unknown number. "Good girl, you listened." Emma's hand squeezed mine until it hurt. We looked at the footage again, but it was grainy, just a dark smear in moonlight. The recorder under my pillow had caught the scrape and the whisper of leaves, and in the faint background, I swore I heard someone else speaking softly. Not English, not quite, words I did not recognize. My skin crawled. We waited out the night and then drove to the police station at dawn with the footage and the postcard and the recorder. The officer on duty looked pale when he watched the grainy clip. He promised to send a team to Third Oak that morning. "We'll check for prints, trash, anything," he said. After we left the station, I got a call from my sister. Her voice was tight. "Why did you go to the police? What did you show them?" she asked. There was no warmth in her tone. I told the truth, only the parts that were indisputable. I showed them the audio and the postcard. "They're sending someone to Third Oak." A long silence. Then, very softly, she said, "You're making this worse, for all of us." Then, she added, with a steadiness that felt like a knife, "You have to stop. If this goes bigger, it will not end well." On my drive home, my mind kept returning to the little bundle under the tree. What would it be? A note? A threat? Evidence planted to scare me off? A message meant to draw attention away from something else? The police would call when they had results. The strategy of proof had shifted into a waiting game I did not like. That evening, I closed the curtains and sat with the plant camera feed playing in a loop. At 9:12 again, the figure moved past the fence and paused. For a heartbeat, it looked up. No face was visible, only shoulders and the odd cut of a jacket, but the sense of being watched tightened into a physical pressure. Then the figure turned and walked away, exactly as before. On my screen, the small bundle lay against the tree like a secret seed. The police had not yet called. The man had not been caught on street cameras. My sister slept through the night as if nothing had happened, and somewhere beyond our house, someone was marking times and leaving parcels and watching if we would follow the bait. I turned off the loop and sat in the dark, the house around me breathing, wondering which was worse, the thing they were hiding or the price I might pay for finding it out. The postcard's arrow and the neat time felt like a map of a place I had no right to enter, and I realized with a cold clarity that this had already become more than family secrets. It had become a warning, and warnings, I was learning, often come right before choices that change the rest of your life. I didn't yet know which choice I would make. I decided to stop pretending I could stay and pretend everything was normal. The house did not feel safe anymore. The police had been helpful, more than I thought they would be, but they could not solve everything in one night. They sent officers to Third Oak, checked for prints, took the bundle, and ran the short video through every camera feed they could. They asked hard questions. They left me with an officer's card and a promise to call me if anything showed up. 2 days later, they called. They had found fingerprints on the plastic that wrapped the bundle. The prints matched a man with a record, not violent, but creepy, old stalking charges in another state. His name came back on a list tied to a string of small, cruel things. Envelopes under doors, notes left on porches, calls with no voice at the other end. He was not someone who used his hands to hurt people in a big way, but he liked to make people feel watched. The police put out a notice and asked anyone with further evidence to come forward. When my sister heard the news, she did not cry. She sat at the counter, hands wrapped around a mug, and finally said one sentence I had been begging for. "We were trying to keep you safe." I asked how. She told a messy story that in parts made sense and in parts felt like someone was trying to make a bad story less bad. Her husband had known the man before they married. The man had reached out again months ago, pressuring them about old things, debts, favors, loyalty. The husband had tried to handle it alone, to make little deals and leave warnings. He told my sister to keep quiet because shouting would bring the man closer. He told me to hide and not to act because action would give the stalker exactly the reaction he wanted. I wanted to believe her. I wanted the whole thing to be explained by fear and bad choices and a little too much pride. But there were still things that did not fit. The whispers at the window, the way her husband looked at me that night. Too calm, like someone who had practiced standing in the dark. And the recorder captured her voice too, saying things like "lie easy" that sat wrong on the tongue when she claimed they had been protecting me. The police asked questions, collected our statements, and took everything we had. The recorder, the postcard, the envelope. They put a shadow over the house for a while. Patrol cars at night, an officer driving past during the day. An older man from the force came over one afternoon and said, "Stay with a friend if you feel unsafe." I did. Emma kept me for a week. I slept with lights on. I changed the locks. A few weeks later, the police arrested a man who matched the prints. He denied everything and fussed about being set up, but the prints and the pattern of calls were strong. The judge put him on supervised release. He had to stay away. The bundle had no more secrets in it, just a stack of cheap trinkets, nothing dangerous, nothing that made sense alone. But the pattern was what mattered. Someone who liked to frighten people, someone who liked to watch. After the arrest, things calmed in a way. The late-night knocks stopped, the anonymous texts stopped. My sister's husband looked tired, and sometimes he would sit very still and stare out toward the yard as if he had lost his sleep there. He stopped meeting my eyes. My sister and I tried to stitch our relationship back together. At first, she was tender and careful, and we had the kind of conversations that are like tentative first steps after an accident. She said again and again that they had wanted to protect me because they thought I was careless, because they thought I would make a scene and make things worse. She kept saying we were trying to keep you safe until it sounded like a broken record. I left the house. I could not keep living somewhere that had been the setting of whispers and secret notes. I rented a small apartment with Emma for a few months. I went to the police station when asked, signed forms, answered questions about the recorder and the postcard. I saw the husband appear at the station for interviews. I listened to my sister agree to do the same. Time did not erase the memory. The man's arrest changed the immediate danger, but not the feeling. It did not fix the way I had been pulled into a private world of secrets, or the way a family I trusted had closed ranks and given me 1,000 reasons to doubt. The house felt different when I visited, even after it was quiet. Mom was careful with her words. Dad watched the road when he drove. My sister smiled, but sometimes there was a flash of fear behind her eyes. Fear not for herself, but for what would happen if those quiet things started again. A month after I moved out, I got a text. No number I knew, no greeting. One line, good luck. No signature. I did not reply. I kept the copies of everything, the recorder, the note scanned to my cloud, the photos, the USB we had made. I filed them away. I told myself I had done what I could. I collected proof, I told the police, I left so that I would not be an easy target. I told myself that sometimes grown people make mistakes, that fear can make people act strange, and that sometimes the explanation for a terrible feeling is a messy human thing, not a grand conspiracy. My sister called one night, voice thin. She said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I know." It was all I could say. We did not say the rest. We both knew how loud that rest would be. Weeks became months. The man's case moved slowly. The police said it was unlikely he would be allowed near the house. My sister and her husband went to therapy. They told me so. The husband's stoic face softened sometimes, and once he hugged me very briefly and said, "I'm sorry you were scared," which was the truest thing he had said to me. In the end, there was no single clean reveal. There was no villain unmasked in bright daylight who explained every odd piece in a way that made sense. There was a man arrested for making people feel watched. There was a family that had tried to keep an ugly thing secret in its own way. There were apologies and small returns to normal life. And there was me, carrying a little stack of proof and the knowledge that my home was my decision to leave. The last scene came on a rainy afternoon when I helped my sister carry a box of old photo albums to her car. We stood under the hatchback, water beating on the cardboard. She looked at me, wiped her hands on her jeans, and said quietly, "I never wanted this for you." "And I never wanted you to lie," I said. She nodded. "I know." She opened the trunk and set the box in. For a second, I thought she might say more, confess something that would make sense of everything. But she only turned and walked away. When I drove back to my apartment, the road was wet and the radio hummed. I held my hands on the steering wheel and breathed in and out until my heart slowed. The house where I had grown up was still there. The family inside it still mine in 1,000 ways. But some doors were closed now that could not be opened the same way again. Weeks later, I threw the small bundle of trinkets, evidence, reminders, into a box marked trash, took it to the alley, and watched the garbage truck take it away. It felt small and important at once. I do not know whether my sister and her husband will fully heal from whatever it was they were tangled in. I do not know if the man at the fence was acting alone or if someone else still watches in the dark. Sometimes when it rains and my curtains are closed, I still feel the prickling at the nape of my neck. Sometimes a car passes slowly by my building and I hold my breath. But I sleep with a lock I changed myself. I answer the door with the chain on. I keep a copy of the recorder hidden in a drawer. I do not tell everyone the whole story because some truths break more than they fix. I tell the parts I must. I warn the people I love to be careful. On a quiet evening months later, I got one last thing in the mail. A glossy postcard, no return address. On the front was a photo of Third Oak in winter. On the back, in thin black ink, "You did the right thing." No signature, no comfort, just the odd, small sentence. I put the card on my fridge and looked at it for a long time. Then I took it down and slid it into the bottom of a drawer with the recorder and the copies of the note. I closed the drawer softly and turned off the light. Outside, the neighborhood breathed. Inside, the house was still mine in the way a person is still theirs after a scar. Marked, changed, moving forward. I could never make everything ordinary again. I could never unhear the whispers or unsee the shadow at the window. But I could choose what to carry with me and what to leave behind. I locked the door, double-checked the chain, and went to bed.